We're looking at spinal nerves, and we organize them by way of a plexus. My name is Brad. I've been teaching anatomy for almost 24 years. I try to simplify the material because anatomy can get very complex. Including with this, there's also a study guide that helps you as you're reviewing this material. A plexus, in review, we had a previous video that looked at definition. A plexus is a group of nerves that have come together. Plexus means braid, so I've braided some of my specific nerves in areas together. So this picture organized them by the plexus. Then we'll break down the nerves of the different plexus, not all of them, but we'll clump them together and talk about what do they act upon or what do they innervate, meaning what is their motor function primarily. So when we look at a plexus, we start with just the neck region, that there's a cervical plexus, meaning where we have the cervical vertebrae coming out of those areas. Remember, for the cervical vertebrae, we have transverse foramina. Those holes within the transverse process allows for blood supply and nerve supply. We have nerves coming out of there. Within that, we group them together, called the cervical plexus. Within the arm, we call this the brachial plexus because we're referring to all of these nerves make up the brachial plexus. So we'll cover musculocutaneous, axillary, median, radial, and ulnar. Notice the terms start to repeat. So as you're moving along through any anatomical or anatomy course, it helps you to learn the language prior because you build off of it. Phrenic is my one example where I talk about it for cervical plexus. That's the one that contributes to hiccups. When we look at these plexus, we'll break them down based on innervation. So I have a plexus, cervical, and brachial. Then I get into intercostal nerves. Intercostal nerves you might also see referred to as thoracic, but intercostal nerves are the ones that are coming off the anterior ramus. Remember, we have a ventral ramus, anterior ramus, or dorsal ramus. Intercostals are coming off and branching off those rami versus the thoracic nerves that you often see those interchangeable, but they are different. The thoracic spinal nerves, on the other hand, those include either the entire spinal nerve, encompassing both the anterior and the posterior rami. So I put this as intercostal as it branches out from the ventral rami. Intercostal in between the ribs. This is not a plexus because it's actually its own group. So we don't call it a plexus, meaning as it goes through the 12 pairs, you have your own grouping of them. Then we get into lumbar region, my lumbar plexus that include as some of our nerves like femoral and obturator. And then as we branch out of the sacrum, the sacral plexus. Now let's look at some of these nerves as we break them down further. I'm using pictures, but the pictures still help to organize anatomically where they're located, but then we'll also understand how do they actually innervate the body or act upon the body. So let's start with this picture to understand, primarily looking at the brachial plexus. So we start with axillary. Axillary branches into the shoulder or the armpit. So what it's innervating on is our primary multi-pennant muscle, the deltoid, and then behind or posterior teres minor. As I come down, there's going to be an M that forms here. And if I look specifically, we're forming an M, and what that M creates is the branches for musculocutaneous, median, and ulnar. So the M, if we think about coming this big stock and it'll create an M, the three bottom parts of the M is musculocutaneous, median, and ulnar. So when I look at the branchings of it, ulnar is going to the pinky side, and ulnar is going to interact with a lot of my hand muscles, including my flexor side. So ulnar, flexor carpi, ulnaris, and then I look at a lot of my hand muscles that control my digits, including adductor polosus, referring to the pollex to help so where I can move my thumb. When I look at going down the middle, I have median. Median's the ones that's actually associated with carpal tunnel syndrome because the median nerve runs through a tissue that's a tunnel through the carpals, my wrist. So when I have repetitive motions like typing, you're building up the irritation of the nerve within that tunnel. So the median nerve, as it comes down, pronator teres, remember supination, pronation. So pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, and then palmaris longus. So when we look at our flexors, it's the ulna side, so ulnar nerve and median nerve, they're controlling those. And then musculocutaneous gets deeper and it interwoven. So what we're learning here is as the muscles develop, the nerves are developing within the muscles because the nerves have to interact or innervate the muscles. So musculocutaneous interacts with coracobrachialis, that little armpit muscle here from the coracoid process to the middle of the brachium, brachialis along the humerus, and then my biceps brachii for curls. Musculocutaneous. Remember we said those three, musculocutaneous, median, ulnar, are part of like that M. Separate to the radial side, then you get into to the thumb side, triceps brachii, brachioradialis, and coneus, which is just distal to the triceps brachii. Supinator, we said pronator is done by the median, but supinator by the radial. Extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis when we get into the radial side. So radial does quite a bit as it extends away from that M that we were talking about. And then I mentioned my intercostals. So intercostal muscles, remember external, internal, and some of my abdominal muscles as I think about the core of my body. So this is that first section where we look at just the arm or brachial plexus. If we move on to another picture that starts to get a little bit lower in the body, I still highlight the radial. And if we go back to the radial, we're repeating again a lot of our major muscles when it comes to the posterior side and how we move things on the extensor side of my body. Down the middle, median, we said our pronator teres that works the opposite of supinator. The flexor side, flexor carpi radialis, and then palmaris longus because it's the tendons going right to the middle of the palm. There's another nerve here called an interosseous that I don't have on our list here because most books will just focus the curriculum that'll cover radial, median, and ulnar. As you identify these on charts and models, directionally understand where they go, to the radius or to the ulnar side, meaning the thumb side or the pinky side, or right down the middle. Sometimes it'll have multiple branches on a picture or a chart or a model. I just pick the major branches, and no matter where it's labeled for the purpose of the test, I just follow it like a road map. So radial on the radial side, median down the middle, and ulnar on the pinky side. As I come down to the lower part of the body, now we're getting into the lumbar plexus and the sacral plexus. Lumbar, when we look at femoral, femoral is impacting the longest muscle in the body, which is the sartorius. All of our quadriceps, remember our quads, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius, and rectus femoris. Pectineus as I go towards the groin, and iliopsoas. Remember, iliopsoas is a combination of iliacus and psoas major. So we're doing a lot of our major upper thigh muscles and then into my quads. As I come down, this will turn over to saphenous. And I don't have saphenous here because it's just a sensory. I'm just including the motor innervations here. So femoral will turn into saphenous. As I've been describing all these nerves, notice it's the same connection. It's just as you change direction of the body. No different than when you drive on the freeway and get off the road and move over to the streets. You're all on the same road. As you change direction, we give it a new name. So we do the same thing when it comes to nerves and a lot of the different flows through the body, including blood vessels. So femoral will become saphenous. On the posterior side, the largest nerve is going to become sciatic. Sciatic is handling my hamstrings, so my semitendinosus, semimembranosus, biceps femoris, specifically the long head, and then another adductor muscle, adductor magnus. When I go through the obturator foramen of the pelvic bone, so when I go through obturator foramen, that hole allows for the obturator, and it hits that most medial muscle, gracilis, and then I just put adductor muscles as a general way to describe it. So we're moving into, we get lower and lower on the distal side. Now let's end with that distal side and move into first on the posterior side. We're looking at our gluteal nerves, and I could break it down into superior gluteal and inferior gluteal. And that's important because it breaks down our gluteal muscles. Inferior gluteal is handling gluteus maximus, my most superficial, large, convergent muscle. Superior gluteal is handling then the next three gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, so my deeper gluteal muscles, and then tensor fascia lata. Tensor fascia lata is the one on the side or lateral side of my body. It's just that small little muscle towards the hip, but it's got that long iliotibial band. That's controlled by superior gluteal. Remember when I said when I drop down at sciatic, my hamstrings and some of my adductor muscles. Sciatic will turn into first common fibular and then tibial. So same highway, we just give it a new name when it splits. Common fibular and then tibial. Common fibular handles a lot of muscles as we go towards moving to the lateral side. So first tibialis anterior, which is on the anterior side next to the tibia. But as I go lateral, this is also called peroneus. So fibularis longus, fibularis brevis can also be called peroneal, longus and brevis. And then I hit biceps femoris short head. So the biceps femoris short head is handled by common fibular. Why is it called common? Because it becomes a superficial and a deep fibular. But I can't see the deep very well, so I just added superficial fibular as it runs down the lateral side because it helps with fibularis longus and brevis. It's just more on the distal side. So that's why they're common to a superficial, because they're closely also related in their function as well as structurally how it branches. And then as I come down all the way down on the posterior side, down the middle, that's the tibial, helping with my calf muscles, first gastrocnemius and then the deeper soleus. And then I get into what I call my Tom, Dick, and Harry, referring to tibialis, digitorum, and hallucis or hallucis. Tom, Dick, and Harry, tibialis posterior, flexor digitorum longus, and flexor hallucis or hallucis longus. These are all deep as I go underneath gastrocnemius and soleus. So the tibial is handling quite a bit when it comes to understanding the motor function behind my leg or posterior. So we're just looking at a way to review these spinal nerves. Look at the study guide if it helps you, because it'll organize these for you to practice them. I want you to just understand that sometimes learning anatomy is just reviewing things. It may not be the same chart or model in your classroom, but it helps to understand just the basic principles of function along with the name and understanding what they do. These are some of our spinal nerves.